Hi everybody and welcome to the 20th episode of Entrepreneurship with Christo. Today I have the pleasure of having Norm Jenkins again on the program. Norm is going to talk about culture from an entrepreneurial perspective, and we also get into some other aspects about relationships with partners, particularly life partners, and also balancing your personal needs with the needs of the business. Norm is what you see is what you get type of guy. Please enjoy my conversation with Mr. Norm Jenkins. My original objective with this was really kind of just to suck it and see, but really I was interested in the personal conversations about the entrepreneurial journey, the challenges, physically, emotionally, financially that hit you, and I definitely think that's part of it. But I think that when it's a company that I don't know, I should learn to shut up a little bit and let them talk, and then maybe later on get into the more nuanced stuff.
Yeah, but I think, it's like your early days in this, and it's sort of like learning the balance between when you need to interject and steer things back into where they need to go versus allowing the other party to sort of
just go into a monologue,
expound on their views in some particular area.
Yeah.
It's hard because I was listening to an interview the other day. It was between John Howard and an ex-member of Parliament in the UK, and it was him talking at the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship conference.
Right.
And so it was a very important conversation about John Howard's period of first of all being in opposition, and then his subsequent 4 terms as the Prime Minister in Australia, and just how much he achieved over that period. And when someone of that calibre is on the other side of the table, it's very hard to understand, what you're saying is interesting, but it's not really our topic right at the minute.
Right.
But John was, he was, I should say Mr. Howard, he was very good at bringing himself back onto task. So some people aren't so good at that. So you've got to help them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's probably a segue into the conversation. So again, this is going to be informal. Thanks for agreeing to come back. As I said, our original one, even though everything went wrong and everything, I don't know, the problems that I had when I first started the podcast just were ridiculous, the amount of problems that I had. But I seem to stumble my way through them to solve them. So now this model works quite well, and I can get them up pretty quickly now. And so it's interesting how I've, sort of ironed out all those bugs. But we were talking, so welcome back, Norm Jenkins. So we'll rely on people knowing a little bit about who you are. But maybe you do a quick intro of yourself, and then we'll crack on with the topic at hand around the way I'm framing it is around culture within organisations, but certainly building culture from a startup, I guess is where I'm going. But we can go wherever you like.
Yeah, so for those of you who haven't had any sort of previous contact with myself, I guess I'm your classic sort of low-level entrepreneur, I would call myself, in the sense that I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. So I've spent my entire working life moving from one opportunity to the next, morphing businesses into whatever they needed to be, to make whatever I needed to overcome changing market circumstances, to get money in the door so I could feed my family, to do the things I needed to do to, I guess, be where I am now. So it was challenging at different times, and then at others rewarding, but many more challenging times than rewarding times, I must say.
Right. I resemble some of those comments. Okay, so I think it's interesting. One of the things that prompted this for me was, I think you really hit the jackpot with I4 when it came to who you hired as your operations director, manager, who brought together a disparate group of executive CEOs, reasonably high level people who were used to self-determining. Not only did she rally them into a cohesive group of professionals doing a specific job, but also built like a culture of, and people use the word family, but it really was, but also a complete lack from my knowledge of any politics, frank and fearless conversations with everybody within the organisation. Everybody was bloody happy to be there.
Yeah, it's great when you're in an organisation where there's little in the way of egos sort of getting in the way. And you're right, I did hit the jackpot in Suzanne coming on board, so the stars aligned, I often would refer, that moment to.
But that was your intent as well,
yeah,
though. I mean, we can't,
yeah,
I don't want to take the,
yeah.
I mean, put credit where credit's due. I mean, this was what you led with.
Yeah, but I mean, I think in some ways, and maybe this is more back to who I'd become over the years, is, you recognise what you're not good at and when you need help. And I knew that the important ingredient I needed was the glue for everyone in the organisation. Just like at home, my wife, Joanne, she's been with me from the start, and without her being my backbone at home, I couldn't have gone off and did the things that I did.
Sure.
And I think that the same analogy applies in business and with, say, the entrepreneur versus, I don't know, call it the doer, that the person that executes on the vision that you have. So whilst the vision can inspire people to want to get involved in work in a particular way, you still need that substantive sort of person who can connect the dots and get people to work together, to fill in the minutiae, of what they need, which is a skill I do not have, So that was what, Suzanne was in the business, an amazing operator, who had, I guess, the depth of character to not bring her ego to the table in anything that she did, which was, amazing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But again, she's only one human being, so unfortunately we can't. I guess we may be able to clone her quite easily against her will. But she's one human being, I guess. And I'm spinning up a new venture, which I won't go into now. But one of the things I'm thinking about is, a workforce that's remote. There is no central, HQ, physical HQ. And how do I tap into that experience that I saw that you did? And I'm sure there are a bunch of people out there. They're at that 1, 2, 3 person level. So I've got a programmer, and I've got a couple of people that I'm thinking about. Once I get the money to bring on board one way or the other. But it's front of mind because I just don't want unnecessary chaos in this business. And so I wonder what's, I'm looking at marketing, I'm looking at cap raising, I'm looking at technology development, I'm looking at legals, I'm looking at finance, I'm looking at everything. But in the back
of my classic entrepreneurial journey, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's like every time you do it, it's always the same. You're always coming back to it. So yeah.
But in the back of my mind is I just I believe I want to hire for culture, and I'll train for skills. I mean, you've got to have some obviously core skills, but you don't have to be a rocket scientist to do the thing. So I guess how important is it, and how would you advise businesses that are, or entrepreneurs that are kicking off now to think about this?
Well, so the core, in my belief, probably going back to that brilliant book by Jim Collins, Good to Great.
Yep.
I think that really encapsulates a lot of the key attributes of a leader in an organisation. One of those that I think is sometimes very hard for most lead entrepreneurs in a new venture is humility. So that ability to sort of pull back from your own desires and intentions, and allow the talent that you've got around you to shine. And when you start to see that occurring, and you recognise this can happen without you, you start to reinforce how much you pull back, and give the reins to other people. Because, those early days of sleepless nights and worry about, are you going to have the money? Are you going to be able to keep trading in 3 months' time when it all runs out? Where's the next, tranche coming from? What customer can you get on quickly through the door, get them to pay quickly so you can, send it straight out the door to pay the next supplier or, person that you're employing or whatever. That whole thing is, that merry-go-round. That's what you're trying to sort of diffuse through everyone else in the organisation, so that you as the entrepreneur can maintain your vision on where things are going, whilst everyone else becomes concerned with the day-to-day of actually making it work. Because that you can't be everything to everyone, but it takes a while to get that, what do you call it, breadth of understanding about who you are, and it's sort of like,
I was going to say,
for me, it was a long journey.
I mean, we're both well over 30,
Yes.
and
absolutely.
and so, that those epiphanies occurred, a decade, 2 decades later, and you go, you know what, I'm not omnipotent. I'm not, I do need help. Somebody who's 25, 30 years old may have, particularly, and I had some successes early stages, and I thought I was kissed on the forehead by God. I thought this stuff is easy. I had more money than I knew what to do with. In the late 1990s, early 2000s, before the .com bomb, and I just thought it was all me, rather than circumstances, really.
Oh yeah. That sort of free cash is a real. It's a real magnet for pretty poor behaviour in the end, isn't it? It's like I remember those wonderful 90s as well. When money was plentiful in the businesses that I was involved with at the time. And you could get whatever car you wanted. You could get the resources together you needed to go on good holidays and whatever, in whatever manner you chose to do that. But there wasn't much thinking around the importance of scale and not, the organisation not being solely dependent on you as the core party driving everyone to get where they needed to go. And so some of my health problems that I'm suffering now are the result of 25, 30 years of pushing to get where I eventually got to. But
there's a cost
that could have been avoided. With some prudent people being around me and me understanding what prudent was.
Right.
And I think that's the value, I guess, of these sorts of podcasts and that sort of thing is that, well, if you're listening, you have a chance to speak to people that are probably speaking, very much from their own experience and their heart about what it really meant to get where they got to, and trying to not varnish that with the other benefits of getting there, because there are lots of benefits. Being autonomous and being in control of your own destiny, I think, are the most intrinsic benefits of being an entrepreneur. Having control over your own future. It's like there's nothing better than to be in that space.
I'd be interested in your view on this is something that's becoming apparent to me more recently, I have to say, unfortunately. Would have loved to have known this 20 years ago. But there seems to be a disconnect. There's absolutely a disconnect between what's really going out in the world and what you think should be going out in the world. So if you say, okay, I'm going to call 20 people, and out of those 20 people, I should have 5 sales or whatever it is, the kind of the classic old sort of conversion rate. The reality is, you may get bounced through all of those calls, and you may or may not know the reason. It could be the script, it could be how you're framing it, it could be just your impression of the value of what you're trying to sell. When you reach out to get help or to get advice or to get an introduction to someone doesn't return your call, and you think, oh, the bastard, he must not think this what I'm doing is good. And so what I found is that you've got to become quite stoic. And you've got to, the old test and adjust in the military. When you fire the bullet, and if the bullet doesn't land right, well then test and adjust, shoot, and bring it on, and just trust that in time, you will latch on to something that you can then lock down. That separation between, real and imagined is a very, very important thing, where you've got this external. It's like a digital twin in your head of what the world actually looks like, and that digital twin is not what the world looks like. It's what you think the world looks like.
Yeah, I think it's that nexus between capability and imagination.
Yep.
It's like, so imagining, you can do this, and then the capability that you have often needs some adjustment, because you don't fully understand what market it is you're getting into, right. and their drivers, whatever's forcing them to operate in the way that they are, you're yet to learn that. And as you learn those things, you adjust. And the capability is about your ability to adjust. Perhaps one of the reasons why I think I've had about 26 or 27 jobs over the term, the discrete things that I've had to, where I could say, I actually had to move into doing that,
right,
to fully understand what that was about.
Yeah, like sound engineering for me in this podcast, something I never thought I'd get involved with.
Exactly, yeah. You had to develop that skill to really create the product that people would want to listen to. So technically, it was a quality of the sound, but in actual fact, it's what people feel comfortable listening to, and will come back to and refer others to listen to as well.
Get some value. And I guess that then taking that back to, this nebulous startup, the new widget startup, because you've got particularly in services, but you've got this conception in your head of what your product looks like, or what your service looks like, and what the value proposition is. And then lo and behold, a few months later, you have dozens of conversations. You think, hang on a minute, I've got to change this because the way I'm seeing this is actually not right. They will buy it, but it's got to be reframed. It's got to be repackaged and redesigned in many cases, so it actually get that market fit. And then going back to culture, then you've got to turn around and say to your team, I got it wrong, or we didn't quite have it right. and I guess understanding that we're always adjusting, we're trying to listen to the market and respond accordingly. And then some people, if you don't get the culture right, go, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. Some people will say, it is about, dozens and dozens of mistakes that are then used as data to create the service that actually is going to have market fit. But some people are going to look at it and go, well, he has no plan. He doesn't know what he's doing. He or she, and they're making decisions that clearly are wrong because he's making all these mistakes. To the same situation with two different interpretations. Do you need everybody to be, on board with the new, that dynamic, lots of mistakes and then we get it right, or do you believe that you can accommodate some people who just need certainty?
Well, I think it's like what you say up front. It's like, when you first meet people, do you have all the answers? It's like, do you come across as someone who's, clearly understands what it's all about? And if you're recruiting people that are, happy to work for someone who clearly understands where they're going, perhaps you're not, certainly wouldn't be the type of person I'd want to employ, so,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like that difference between, you have to give something of yourself and expect something of yourself in business, and so the people that work with you, you're wanting more than just the job description.
Yep.
You're wanting more out of them. It's like their creativity. It's their ability to see a problem and come up with the sorts of experiments that you can run to test the hypothesis that you're trying to prove or disprove.
Yep.
And get to that really quickly, because if you don't, then you run out of money.
Yeah, well, that's right. And like what you were saying earlier too about you giving people the freedom to. It's a hard thing to do when you can see people making mistakes that they are mistakes, and you're actually already there in terms of what the right or wrong way is to do it. If you're burning through your own money, particularly for it's your own capital that you're allocating to the business, that's a teeth gritting moment where emotions can run high.
Oh, for sure. Well, I think in some ways it's part of professional development in my mind. It's just it's almost like it's an underlying sort of thing, because your resilience to that testing regime and seeing people have to go through that learning process, the pain of not getting something right, that to know that it's cost them time, effort, first of all, because obviously they assume something didn't work out, and so whatever intellectual sort of energy they put into that, well, that's gone. But to get to a point where they've spent the company's money on not getting any further down the track, or that's what they believe, but for the company itself to have the resilience to allow that expense to occur. So when you think about that, like, let's pull that back to, it's not just the company, it's the investors and their mindset.
Yeah,
it's the people that put up the money. So in most of my ventures, it's been my money, so it was reasonably easy to adjust my thinking to allow a certain latitude in how far people were allowed to go in trying things out. But when you're looking after someone else's money, the context is very, very different. Unless you understand their culture and they're the right sort of investor for your type of organisation.
Yeah.
And then there's that alignment that's going on between everyone about how important it is to learn, along the way, and that we're going to make mistakes, and that those mistakes are going to be painful financial as well as emotional lessons for everyone along the way. So, it's finding everyone in the chain in that same culture is so important.
Yeah, it reminds me of a book that I read a long, long time ago. I should circle back and reread it because it's been 2 decades at least, possibly 3. What They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School, I think it was called. So it's all the things that are not. So you can use a spreadsheet, you can structure up a marketing plan, you can write a pitch, you can do everything, but there are a bunch of things that no one. It's only It's only experience. Sorry about that. Let me just kill that. It's only experience that'll really give that to you. And I can't really sing the praises of the book, but it did leave an impression on me. I have to reread it to see what it says, through these eyes now. This is version Peter Christo 3.0. But I wonder, how do you get that from, when you're at that earlier stage? So, who is a good advisor? Who is a good, I value, obviously the sort of advice and the insights that you have, I find them very, great and insightful. But what should somebody be looking for? Because I've seen that there's a lot of people out there who claim to be business advisors, and really they work in big corporates, they retired, or they went out to the world. Now they're saying, I'll advise you as a startup, or I'll advise you as a small business, and whatever. I have my hesitancies around those sorts of people.
Yeah. What should people be looking for? Well, I think first of all that there has to be some capability that this other party has that they're bringing to the table, with that is filling gaps in your own skill set, whatever that is. So whether that's connections into markets, connections to money, all those things, that sort of is a reasonable starting point. But the reason why you'd work with anyone that has those things over another is how will they work with you personally? Where will they fit into the team? How will they conduct themselves to represent the ongoing culture that you're trying to build up in your organisation? As I remember early days in my last venture, I spoke to a number of, call it business consultants, that were going to help us put together the management system that would sit in the background of how the senior leadership team in the company would operate. And one of them I was put onto by a very respected and well-known person in the entrepreneurial space. But that person that I spoke to, I didn't connect with them. They just, there was something about them that they were saying all the right things, and I could see that it was all really logical, but there was just no connection there. And it's like that gut feel, and as you get along in the thing, so as you're a young person, you probably you should rely on that, but you're less, it's less of a trained organ, that gut feel, when you're young, or early days in your business, when you feel a newbie in the business space or entrepreneurial space. So what you want is someone who has that expertise and background, and is going to provide you that linkage in experience that you don't have, but who really understands what your vision is and buys into that, and is sort of like it's something that you can see they buy into, as you as the entrepreneur, them as the support for your entrepreneurial journey. You need to know they believe in your vision and want it as much as you do, and are willing to go to whatever ends there are to help that come about. That's the right type of person to be working with.
How do you reconcile the not having somebody who just agrees with everything you say? Because sometimes there's money changing hands too, right? So So, everybody wants $1,000 a month coming from, 20 individuals there's got to be, I think there needs to be an integrity, and there needs some level of, not necessarily friction, but just pushback on certain assumptions, kind of talking about the imaginary digital twin of the world and saying, actually, that's not the way, and really for you to hear it and then put your ego aside and say, okay. But at the same time, not just taking everything holus bolus from that individual. Yeah. This episode is sponsored by 3P Legal. I've been a customer of Peter North as my lawyer, and now 3P Legal for over a decade. Peter and his team are friendly and approachable, which takes the stress out of having to navigate the complexities of legal business matters. Whether starting a business, buying or selling a business, handling contracts or estate planning, their personalised attention and quality of work is second to none. Find Peter and his team at www.3pcorp.com.au or email pnorth@3plegal.com.au if you need commercial or personal legal services, particularly if you're a startup. Do you have a self-managed superannuation fund that holds Bitcoin or other digital assets? Leveraging DAC's unique technology, DAC's digital attestation report simplifies your SMSF audit compliance, divorce, or other dispute resolutions. Recognised by Australian auditors and adhering to regulatory standards, their report extends beyond audits to offer decisive evidence in disputes. Prioritising your privacy and security, DAX simplifies digital asset management and provides peace of mind. Their advanced technology ensures a straightforward approach to complex issues from audit protection to legal dispute evidence. Enhance your digital asset management and dispute resolution with DAX innovative solutions. If you are an SMSF trustee, accountant or auditor, or have a dispute regarding digital assets like Bitcoin, contact DAX today at hello@dax.io. That's hello@DAC for Charlie, S for Sierra.io, or call 1300 346 495 or go to their website dax.io.
Well, maybe my idea here is that if you're talking to someone about potentially working with you for a considerable period of time, because let's face it, that entrepreneurial journey isn't something that's going to sort of come to fruition in 12 months. It's probably a 10-year gig,
right?
And so you're not just interviewing someone, now for a couple of bucks now. You're interviewing them for a long-standing relationship, in a way, a bit of a marriage of people over the journey of that venture. And so I think you have to take the longer-term vision on who you want involved and will they be around in 10 years, will their pursuits pull them to other things, are they so committed to you to still want to be around in those future years, you and your vision. Yeah.
But I guess if you're, if you're at that sort of clean sheet of paper startup stage and you've engaged with someone and there's somebody's fit for purpose to get you going, get the aircraft built, dragged out of the hangar, pointed down the runway and try and get its nose up. By the time you get its nose up, maybe it's somebody else that needs to help you sort of, climb hard, and get properly airborne.
Yeah. So I think that's sort of more about perhaps deciding that. So in the sorts of relationships that I want to have with any organisation that I might work with, it would be along the basis of trusted, long-term advisor and friend and confidant and
ideally you've worked with them before too.
Mentor. Yeah. And it's not about an engagement to achieve a certain outcome. See you later. Because chances are the outcome is long enough away that by the time you get there, it'll have morphed into something else anyway.
Yeah. I mean, the perfect scenario is they're an investor and an advisor. So they've
Yeah.
got skin in
Yeah.
the game. They've put some of their capital
Yeah.
down. So they've bet on you, and really
Mm.
the business coach really is, I've set up an accounting firm. I've never run an accounting firm before. I need, somebody to talk to. There's a place for that,
Mm.
definitely.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking
No.
about
No.
you.
We're talking about new territory. It's
Yeah.
like we're talking about um, new markets,
Mm.
new technologies, big scalable opportunities that disrupt current ways of doing business. So it's a very different it's a very different beast
Mm.
to your accountant, sort of 5 years out of a degree,
Mm.
wanting to start their own accounting practice, for
Yep.
example.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Mm.
I'm I'm going to sort of go into some controversial territory here. So where does diversity, equity, and inclusion sit within the entrepreneurial endeavour? Do you believe?
So I would say, to a great extent, the value that I saw in my most recent venture was in the diversity and equity model that we approached with. Before that, I don't think I would have given it much credence. It would have been right right capabilities and skills, not in that order. Sorry, it would be right values, right capability of skills, irrespective of gender or you know preference or inclination in any other realm, right? Um, and and often it was the first party that presented with those characteristics who got the nod to get a role.
Right.
With my last venture, there were quite a few people that presented with the capabilities at the time of recruiting, because we got literally, you know, hundreds of people applying for roles. But we didn't appoint the first person that resonated with us.
Right.
We were looking for the right mix of people for the organisation. It was the first time that I've consciously not employed people who fit the bill
Mm.
the day we interviewed them as the first, the first one off the rank. We had that equity and diversity mix, but it was about trying to ensure that there was the right balance in the organisation more generally,
Mm.
And trying to emulate what it is what the government was pushing us to do, because that was a government role that we were taking on, and we were trying to replicate exactly what they wanted us to be in our organisation, from the way we were set up from a digital perspective, in our online sort of presence, in our systems that we're working with, to the mix of people in the organisation from a gender perspective and a diversity perspective as well.
So that's a client dictating that, but from a effectiveness and sort of commercial outcome point of view, do you think that, assuming it's not a government client, or you've got a market, finance or whatever, what is the right way to do this and what is the wrong way to do this? Obviously, you're not going to get a panacea of different skin colors, heights, some PhDs, some finished year 10. So there's got to be a fit. There's got to be a fit, and there's got to be a capability, right? If you're setting up a sprinting team, you're not going to have dwarves and obese people in a sprinting team, right? You're not going to win the Olympics. How do you frame this so it actually delivers the value that you're looking for, so you can really extract that value and then obviously create a sustainable organisation, as opposed to just lining up with policies that may change tomorrow?
So I think it takes a bit of a leap of faith
Mm-hmm.
in what you've sensed from the conversations that you've had with those likely candidates before you appoint them. Like you you need to be going with people that fit, what it is that you believe, you where you want to take your organization. And like we said before, and perhaps before we even started recording this conversation, we come up with, that people can pretty much be trained to do a lot of what we do. However, you can't get people that come from the right origin, in terms of where they sit culturally, with each other, with other people, how they sit. And hand on my heart, everyone in my last venture was someone who you'd get in your trenches with. You
Not that
wanted
Peter
to
Christo guy. Not that
work.
Peter Christo guy.
Yeah, yeah. No, but it's like but you did that was the primary selecting sort of criteria. Is this someone we feel will fit with the business? And look, early days, there was just a couple of us involved in selecting who was coming in. But as we got more sophisticated around this, there were 3 levels
Right.
of checking that occurred. Sort of like happened at a state level, then it happened at operations level, and then it was finally sort of with me, and not necessarily in that order, but bouncing up and down between those different levels, we would come to an agreement on whether or not a person was right, and then bring them in. And look, they mightn't have been the best candidate on the basis of their credentials, for example, but they were the best candidate based on their values and likely fit for the organisation. Sure, we got it wrong a few times, but mostly we got it right. Yeah.
So it's personality type, but I guess it's also, if you've come from a culture, South America or something like that, you're going to come to the conversation with a different perspective on some of these things, but particularly if you're dealing with Australian nationals who've born and raised here several generations back, that must be tricky. That must be tricky.
Yeah.
But I guess ultimately, if you're clear, I guess you keep an eye on it too. There's a risk associated with not getting it right. There is no absolute. So on the balance of probabilities, Fred Schnurbergler is going to fit. He's our candidate of choice. However, there's a trial period. Hopefully you're going to watch him for 6 months until you align your bet with the outcome.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I don't know, when you've made the decision to appoint someone, you need to follow that up with the right sort of supports to make sure that any misgivings that may start to present in the workplace in relation to that recent hire, that there is a mechanism to address those things early on. But a probationary period is there to be used, and sometimes you got to use it. And whilst you've gone to all the trouble to find someone and whatever else, the mere sense that somebody may not be right, you test that from multiple sources, and if they're not right, well, they're not right. And you got to make that tough call to say goodbye.
Well, absolutely. And the thing is, you don't want to keep a person in a situation that's not good for them either. Then, resentment builds up and all sorts of problems, appear.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to shift the conversation a little bit across to, different cultures that within which we work. So a lot of businesses that are starting up, and this one that I'm doing now, we're going to quickly go into other jurisdictions. So there's an American frame of mind around, whether they're venture capitalists that you're dealing with or whether prospective clients that you're dealing with, versus an Aussie type of mindset. I would describe it as a little bit more conservative, whereas an American is a little bit more, yep, looks like it works, let's give it a go sort of thing, is my impression. I've done some work in the States, but I can't say I've done a massive amount. And then I guess Europe, where you've got multiple languages, different traditions, particularly, I've got Greek heritage. If I was going to do business in Greece, that would be something to consider about what that would look like. What's your experience been? So if you're setting up a company that is a global company and now you're hiring people across jurisdictions, obviously different rules and responsibilities as far as that's concerned, but in terms of getting the right culture from a, say, venture capital point of view, or whether from a skills point of view, how do you look at that?
Hand up here, I haven't had a global business.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a local Australian sort of business that operated on a national basis in a couple of different stages of my entrepreneurial sort of endeavours, but never have I really had to deal with the differences between, say, working in Canada and Australia, or working in sort of Southeast Asia and Australia. I've not had to deal with those differences. But if I could just apply, the normal logic to this, is before I went into any of those areas, I would absolutely have my contacts on the ground and who I would rely on for good referral and or being in those locations to commence those conversations.
Yep.
It's like, I don't know, but I recognise I don't know. So the first thing I'm going to do is try and find someone who may be able to refer me to someone who probably does. And it's always like the 3 degrees or 6 degrees of separation. You're gonna find someone through your networks, or someone you're connected with will be able to help you find someone through their networks. So it's going to work out. I reckon you'll get it right, Pete.
Yeah. This other chap that I spoke with last week, Nick, he told this extraordinary story where he was told by a business friend or relation that he needed an advisor from the finance industry, and he gave him a name, and it was a common name like Bill Smith or something like that. I've actually got a mate called Bill Smith. And so he found him on LinkedIn and reached out to him and connected with him. And the guy was, happy to help him. But what he didn't know is that he had got the wrong Bill Smith. It wasn't the guy he was referred to. It actually was the ex-CFO for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, who was
who he was talking to,
kind enough to say, "Oh, this
Really?
young fella's reached out to me, so I'm going to help him." So on the advisory board, he
Great
went.
story. Yeah.
Sometimes, believe in what you like, but sometimes the universe plays in your favour.
Yeah. But I think it's interesting, because certainly a man of that character and with his career and that sort of thing, what a great connection that is to make that. But there's a lot of people that haven't had that level of success in their endeavours or whatever, if you like. The CFO for the Gates organisation. You think, man, it's like there are so many people out there that are able to offer assistance and guidance and all the things that you need. And I think sometimes the stopper is people don't ask.
Absolutely.
People honestly just take it all on. They hold it in. They get all stressed and worry and don't sleep and all those other things. But they're not reaching out. They're not calling for help. It's like, I think the times that I've struggled the most in my career doing what I've been doing is the times where I've been silent about the problems that I was really feeling. and they weren't things that I could speak to my partner Joanne about, because they in some ways were a direct reflection on my inability to cope
Mm-hmm.
with where I was at the time. So I didn't want to feel like be that vulnerable to my message. But eventually, I
It
would
comes out.
have to
It
be,
comes out.
because it comes out. Eventually, it comes out.
But
But
that's
for the time that you're holding on to that, that problem, or that understanding that perhaps this business I'm in is the walking dead, and I need to move on to
yeah,
something that's more
yeah,
fruitful. But the 100K I've already poured into this one is down the tube, and so now I've got to have that really serious conversation, with my partner in life about, well, look, I'm sorry, I've done it again, but you know,
she
will
just
you?
looks at the ground, and my mum was right.
Yeah, yeah. Will, will you back me on my next thing?
It's a
Yeah,
disease.
yeah,
I
yeah.
I think it's a really
Mm,
interesting point you make, and I think it's
mm,
it's something that's not really discussed very often, because, I certainly, and you've spoken about it on a number of occasions with Joe, that report, you report to a board and you report to advisors and whatever, but who you really report to when you go back home and
mm-hmm,
at the kitchen table or on the breakfast bench is your partner, who is saying, how's it going, and
mm,
she is, I guess, is eyeballing you because they know you. and
yeah.
you know
Well, here's I guess an anecdote that might be useful for anyone to listen to now about relationships and entrepreneurship more generally. Is that um, sometimes in the hustle, you you have to know when to say no. You have to do that, because I think if you want to lose your soul or your soulmate, don't pay attention to those things.
yep
Right? You have to understand that the journey of being successful, it has to be something that continues to support and enhance the relationships that you value most in the world. You cannot be someone who, to the exclusion of all else,
mm,
follows through with your dream, because the divorce, the splitting of the assets, the resulting
impact on the
uh,
kids.
destruction of your life, and then the rebuilding that then has to go on. That's 10 years.
Yep, easy,
Uh,
and I'm a
and I'm not saying you don't do it for those reasons, but when you meet someone, you want to spend the rest of your life with them. Um, there are some things that you shouldn't risk,
yep.
for that. And
And I
for me,
guess
that's something that's sort of held me back at different times, and I've pursued different opportunities on the basis of a consideration around the implications for my family.
yeah, sure. So I've
Mm,
seen this on both sides of that. So I've seen it,
mm,
with my ex-wife, and so you're tethered, really. You're tethered financially. You're tethered with regards to responsibility to your kids, your families, all that sort of stuff. It's different. So I've got a new partner. She's an amazing human being and supports me in every way that I could ever imagine, and extraordinary in her insights, even though she's not a business person per se. She's highly rational.
mm,
But we don't share a balance sheet. We don't
mm,
share, we haven't got kids together. We haven't got a mortgage together. So she can look at things pretty impartially, because if I fly up, she gets a ride. If I crash, financially, she's not going to, she might be upset for me and whatever, but I'm not going to take her down with me. When you're
mm,
intertwined, though, maintaining that perspective, I guess what you're saying is right on. I think there needs to be a conversation, and there needs to be a hard stop on, and it's hard to align two people who are diametrically opposed risk-wise, or who don't, in my view, who don't really. If you have one person who says, "Look, JOB, and that's it, no risk, you're probably with the wrong person. So there needs to be at least an appreciation of the spectrum of risks that we all take, and real versus imagined risks, and sometimes what we think is a risk is actually not, and what we didn't think of, that's the real risk, right? So, but having some sort of framework to have that conversation where, and you touched on it before, where you said, I can't remember the exact words you used, but you said you don't want to spook her or him, you don't want to put them in a state of fear where now they think he's making decisions that are irrational and they're going to impact on me, and the kids and our way of life. But at the same time, fish got to swim, bird got to fly, right? So if you've got that entrepreneurial character, that's got to be expressed. To somehow reason needs to,
Well, I think it too. In a way, it can be selfish what you've got to do, because the last thing I wanted to do at any point in this journey was conduct myself in a way that would result in some hard decisions having to be made by my partner that put her into a bad position emotionally in relation to our relationship.
Yeah.
It's like, that was the last thing I wanted to do. Not to say that there weren't, call it line ball times where that was the case, because, financial pressure, being away from home, by my early days, I was virtually away from home 5 days a week while the kids, were between 1 and 5, so, and there were 4 of them, so there were lots of, imagine that, it's like I'm away all week doing my thing, trying to sort of, provide, and my partner's at home doing the hard yards, and so, I guess we sort of really understood who, what job each of us had, and I'd work 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, trying to get to where we needed to be financially, and Joe was capable of doing the other things that she needed to do, and quite frankly, we were a good fit, because that was her happy place, actually being there. And it's not to say that she didn't have her own stresses and all that sort of thing throughout that time, but we talk about it now, and I just think if you're going to go on this journey, it's not your journey.
Yeah.
It's your family's journey.
It is.
And you need to be all part of it, and there's great benefits, because, we took the kids on some amazing holidays when they were young, and they got to enjoy some very, fantastic Christmases and things like that. But there were times, maybe 10 years of times, where, we struggled.
Yep.
We struggled. We had to pull our heads in and live frugally, and not pay the mortgage down, and interest only for 10 years. I reckon we lived in a mortgage for a while. It's like it was a long period in the desert. I've got to say.
I bet.
Yeah.
Mate, I think that's a great place to stop. I think there's a bunch of topics in there that we could probably talk on and on.
I didn't think I'd be getting into this today, Pete. I thought I was going somewhere else with all this, but no, it's been a great conversation.
Yeah. Thank you, and thanks for the open way in which you talk. I think I'd like to, keep you in the background to bring you, to wheelie you out once in a while. But maybe before we finish, just tell people what you're doing now and how they can get in touch with you if they'd like to get in touch with you, and we'll put some.
Thanks, Pete. I appreciate that.
Put some notes in the.
So, I guess I'm looking for a couple of founders to work with. That's what I'm most interested. I can't spread myself too thin, because I just don't want to work that hard anymore. But with a couple of founders, I think I'm probably the right mix of humility and experience to greatly assist them go somewhere with whatever it is they're trying to achieve. And that's probably where I'm at. I feel like there's a systematic way that you can put a new business together and deal with all of the things that you've got to do to make it scale. And probably what I'm most good at is the underlying business systems and processes that would support that high growth venture. And so if there's someone out there that's thinking that that's what they'd like to do, and they're short of a person that can work for them on a part-time basis to assist in that area, then I'm probably someone worth speaking to.
Fantastic, and I'd echo that. I think you are definitely worth speaking to, particularly in those early stages. Thank you so much, and I'll definitely have you back next time. Thanks, Norm. Okay, I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Norm Jenkins. I think these conversations are very nuanced and very, very important. I think there are a bunch of other topics that we need to talk about, and I will endeavour to make sure that happens in future episodes. Have a wonderful day and stay curious.